Hey, Andrew.
Hey, Scott. Good to see you.
Good to see you. How you doing today?
I'm great. Did you have a good weekend?
Yeah. Yeah, it was good. It was good. How about you?
Good. Why does it say we're live? I guess we're live. I don't know how we're live. I don't know how we're live, but we're live.
I saw the countdown. I was going, oh, that's new.
Just don't say anything bad.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. Well, welcome everybody. We'll have a little we'll have a little banter before we get going here. It's good to see everybody. So, did you all have a good weekend?
Absolutely.
Good.
Well, here it was 80 plus degrees, so it was an extension of the summer, so I was ecstatic.
Was University of Michigan playing home or away this weekend?
They were home this weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was actually homecoming.
How was it? How'd they do, Eric?
They won. Yeah, they beat Wisconsin.
Right. You had a house full of people, right?
I did have a house full of people. Yeah, had 6 girls.
Oh, wow.
Women. I gotta stop calling them girls. They're 22 and 23 years old.
And Scott, you've been on the road quite a bit, right?
Yeah, it seems like I'm always on the road these days. Yeah, conferences and such. So yeah, it's been a busy fall so far. The last week I was here at home, and this week I'm here for the majority of the week. And then I go into I think 2 weeks of travel. So
Okay. Very
Yep.
cool.
yeah.
Back in DC for one of them, because I know I was talking to your wife about
Yeah, next week, AUSA. So next week we have, so next week we're in DC at AUSA, which is Association of the U.S. Army. It's a big defense, conference. So that's going on the first half of the week, and then the second half of the week, we move over to CS5, which is the Cyber AB, their official conference for the CMMC ecosystem. So we'll be over there for that. We're a sponsor for that.
yeah, and that was the culmination date. They took over your bought your
Yeah. So Forum Makers is the name of the company. So they acquired our CS2 conference and combined it with their Seek conference. They were doing Seek. I can't remember what Seek stands for, but Seek CEIC East and West. And so they acquired our CS2 conference, combined them together, and ultimately ended up branding it CS5. So
Okay.
that's the new one. This will be the first official CS5. We announced it at the Seek West conference that was in Las Vegas back in May, I guess. So, yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, so we decided that it was a better use. We obviously been putting that. I think we did 14 of the CS2 conferences since 2019, and for us to continue growing it, we were basically going to have to spin it off and essentially make it its own company, just simply because of the amount of time and effort. When you start getting above, and you know this very well, when you start getting above, 300 to 400 attendees, you really have to. It's a year-round planning exercise. You got to have dedicated staff. And we were doing that whole conference. We did 14 of them. We were doing it all with our internal marketing team.
Wow.
And so, it was taking a tremendous amount of time from our other marketing efforts. And so we decided that, best thing to do would be to sell that off, combine it with another conference that's looking to go to 1,000 to 2,000, attendees. And then we have a new series that we're calling S7 Live or Summit 7 Live. And so that's going to be smaller, smaller venues, 40, 50 people at a time. And we'll be doing those about monthly instead of, 2 or 3 times a year.
And will they be regionally, Scott?
Yeah, they'll be regional. Like we've done, we did one in Dallas. We did one here in Huntsville. We've got one in Tampa next month. So we'll be going all over the country with them.
Okay. Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Now the AUSA, and by the way, if you're just joining, I know there's a few of you on. I hit live already. So this is like if you ever watched a John Strand talking about security. There's about 20 minutes of banter beforehand. That's nonsense. You're
Green
in the
room conversation, right?
yeah, you're in the green room conversation of nonsense. No, it's not nonsense, but we'll get going here shortly. I just accidentally started things ahead of time. But yeah, so is the AUSA, Scott, can that be a good thing for you from a lead perspective? Or are you showing up there, two-part question, and are you showing up at Summit 7, MSP Collective, both? How do you do?
Yeah. So good question. So AUSA, that's where our customers are.
Mhm.
So it's almost all defense contractors are there, right? They're all showing their wares, their hardware, whatever they produce to the Army. So
Okay.
there's lots of Army generals, colonels, et cetera, that are in attendance. And so it's an opportunity for defense contractors to essentially show Army leadership, these are our capabilities. This is what we have. This is what we're bringing to market, all of those kinds of things. And so obviously that's our customer base, right? And so it's good for us to be there just to engage with them. We have a reception that we're doing on Tuesday night. We invite everybody to, customers and such. It's an opportunity for us to meet with leadership from some of our customers. It's not so much an active lead generation effort for us as it is more a engaging in our customers community. And it's the community that I came from as well. So it's a great opportunity for me because I get to see, lots of old friends and, and such that happen to be, still in the ecosystem. So
Yeah. Did a lot of folks from go West Point, obviously commissioned, and then
yeah, sure.
find a lot of them still in and around it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we actually host a lunch. Amy and I, we host a lunch typically on Tuesday of AUSA for our classmates, and we'll have 15 to 20 classmates that'll be there. Just working the conference for whatever company they work for, and it's just an opportunity for us to get together, a little mini reunion time.
Very cool. Very cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's fun.
Good. Let's see. Let me just see where Lair is. Bear with me. In the waiting room. He says he's in the waiting room. Oh, you are in the waiting room, Chris.
Not any longer.
It wasn't lying.
I'm like, where's Chris? There you are, Chris. Perfect timing. Chris, I accidentally hit. I was telling everybody that's watching already, who I don't know how or why, but I accidentally hit the live. So it's like the John Strand talking about security, watching all the banter before the actual.
It's all right.
Gets
It's
going.
see behind the scenes.
Behind the scenes. Yeah, exactly. Okay. So we are at 1 p.m. and folks will start trickling in now. I did want to put something up, and Chris, you helped me be my eyes the other day. Let me see if I can just find this real quick. I thought this was interesting, and somewhat relevant for as we kind of go into our session today on deepfakes. So let me share my screen as people come in, and love to talk to you all about this. So this was just put out. I'm not sure if you saw it.
Looks good.
You see it? Okay, great, Chris. So, one of the things that LinkedIn does quite well is it has, technologies looking for bots, right? Creating fake accounts. This organization, Pro APIs, created essentially a million fake accounts on LinkedIn, and then use those accounts to scrape and sell data. The reason I wanted to bring this up is, Sandy, maybe just getting your thoughts before we start off today. Could something like this be a good precursor, if you will, to targeting? You know, executives, and we've seen a lot of this North Korean type um, uh, for lack of a better word, employees who are supposedly U.S. in nature. But could this be? Not saying this is, but is this the type of thing that potentially targets these deepfakes, or the precursors to deepfakes?
Yeah, so that's a great question. The precursors that you're referring to are just all the different data with which you make it relevant and you make it contextual. So the data mining is a really key component for you to make something convincing. So the days of the Nigerian prince are over, right? Now it's more about a sophisticated multi-layer approach where you'll get a PDF as an attachment to an email with a CC'd letter from your executive going to a accounting individual who says, "Hey, the executive approved this invoice," and it looks legitimate, and there's a phone number,
Yep.
and hey, here's your W-9, and right. So it's to the point where someone in my private equity firm literally called the number and said, "Hey, you've got us registered wrong. We're a limited partnership, not an LLC," right? And someone answered the phone and then sent a new W-9, right? So it's amazing how sophisticated it is. And there are very really impressive organizations, and I'll call them organizations. They're not just the bad hacker or the hacker group anymore. They are legitimate companies that have payroll, benefits, paid time off, healthcare, retirement plans in many countries around the world that are actually offering, and they each specialize. So the one that you're referring to specializes obviously in databases, and then other folks specialize in malware, and still other folks specialize on social engineering. And it's the combination of all of those together that provide these sophisticated attacks.
So
Sandy, it's really interesting that you bring that specific situation up, because I literally have had that specific email twice in the last 2 weeks, where my accounts payable team reached out to me and said, "Hey, is this legit or not?" I mean, it's literally the exact scenario that you outlined. I've had twice in the last 2 weeks.
Wow.
We've seen many from our customers.
Yeah. So, Chris, it sounds like this is very similar, or has become, or is becoming similar to the the traditional, whether it's malware ecosystem, etc., ransomware ecosystem, I should say, where you have access brokers, call it database, harvesters. Is this becoming an ecosystem very similar to the ransomware ecosystem? I think you're on mute, Chris. 1 second.
I think it would be. There would be. In my opinion, we'll get to this. Some of the questions. In my opinion, it's kind of a different target market for these guys. So I think it's new, or it's a newer technique aimed at different types of individuals that can get you basically in the center of the organization pretty quickly. And it's really freaking effective. I mean, I've personally seen examples of this stuff when it's actually fooled people, and it's fooled very sharp people, and it's done really well. And the thing about it, and we'll get to it, is it doesn't take much. So I think, it's kind of like you're just leveraging the talents of these bad guys out there, and a lot of them are either, hey, this is stuff that we can do maybe better than the other guys, or they just see that, hey, look, this is a better pricing model for us. We can make more margin on this than we can do the traditional access brokering stuff.
Interesting. Well, let's get on into it. So as I do some intros here, Scott, you and I ran into each other a few weeks ago at a show, and you were sharing with me. I don't want to steal what you said. I'm going to let you repeat the story as you first to do an intro, but then I'd love
Sure.
the story before we get to Sandy, which led me to go, let's get Sandy on too for this, because I thought it was like very timely, and specifically because of not only the fact that it's something that we see more and more, but it's your role in the ecosystem. Not to blow smoke, to you, but you have a very important role in our ecosystem, being the largest, MSP that just
Sure.
did. So I see you as a prime target
Absolutely.
of this. So maybe, share who you are, what you do,
Yeah.
and then a little bit about that.
Yeah, happy to. I'm CEO of Summit 7. We are a defense industrial base focused managed service provider. So that's, we support about 1,200, DIB customers around the country. We're, like I said, we're an MSP. And so we obviously have, all of these customers on our tech stack, and, we're doing all the MSP things, but we're doing it for a critical infrastructure sector. The defense industrial base is considered a critical infrastructure sector. And that makes us a target because we have, ties into all of these companies, which, Summit 7 could be used as a launching point. And it's not just Summit 7, it's any MSP, right? And so, we are a target, and we realize that. And that's one of the things that we talk about. I also am the executive director at the MSP Collective, MSPs for the Protection of Critical Infrastructure, where we're trying to bring together all of our competitors, honestly, into a single organization, so that we can share information both internally, but also with the government about, hey, these are the things that we're seeing in the ecosystem. This is what an MSP does. This is what an MSSP does. These are the risk profiles that we're dealing with. And, if we're supporting these critical infrastructure sectors, the bad guys want to get access to us and other MSPs like us, because that gives them potential access into, a rich target where these hackers are trying to get, these bad guys are trying to get access to, military systems, or, weapon systems information, or whatever it might be, right? And so we have to realize that we are a target, and we have to protect ourselves accordingly. And that's not just Summit 7, that's all MSPs that are dealing in this specific market, because, we do have a heightened target on our back, and Summit 7 and our team definitely feels that. And sometimes I feel like I'm paranoid, but is it really paranoia if they really are out to get you, right? Um, or is it just being being aware, right?
Yeah. No, Scott, and I did put kudos to you guys. I loved what you did with the MSP Collective. I put that in. If you're working with the DIB and you're an MSP, Scott has already built a list. If you're not there and you have those criteria, reach out to the MSP Collective. He literally puts, what your audit level is, et cetera, et cetera. So great job on that, Scott. And I love what you and Amy are doing there. Sandy, over to you, and welcome. Tell us a
Thank
little
you for
about
having me.
NetArcs and the fact that you're a recovering MSP as well.
I am. So, no, I started an MSP with Eric many, many years ago. And now we focus on deepfake detection and social engineering. So we have launched a product known as the Flirp, and it's an agent that you put on any desktop or mobile device or laptop, and it helps provide a visual indication of threat for any form of corporate communication, whether it's email, voice, video calls, any image, social media image that may be on your phone or your laptop. So the category that Gartner calls us as is disinformation security.
Yeah.
So that's the new buzzword.
Do you like that term?
I didn't, but it's growing on me. And the reason it's growing on me is because it immediately resonates for folks who are laymen's, right? The word disinformation has instant, recognition to someone who's not an IT person and or has no real computer background. And when we add the word security, so it's disinformation security, it evokes an understanding pretty quickly, and close enough is kind of how I look at it.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and it's good explanation, Sandy. And you guys are talking about the next layer of the OSI model, don't you? I thought that was pretty clever. Can you share about that a little?
Yeah. I mean, everyone's familiar with the OSI 7-layer model, and you start at the physical and get up to the presentations, like what is on my screen. And we firmly believe that the problem is the 8th layer, and that's the human. And you just can't expect so and so in accounting to actually be a human firewall. And many corporations are today, with the expectation of security awareness training. It's just not sufficient, and so people need tools to help them restore trust in what's on their screen.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right.
And
Yeah.
and Andrew, you had asked me to kind of explain the situation on
Yes,
kind of
yes,
how we had the conversation, right?
Yeah.
So essentially, what we've come across in the last, I would say in the last 4 to 6 months, we've seen this situation really developing. Talking about Summit 7 and MSPs like us being a target, we have seen active, deep fake, potential deep fakes. We not confirmed, but we have seen people applying for jobs, right? And they apply for jobs, and they apply for jobs with multiple resumes. They apply for jobs under different identities, but it's the same individuals doing it. And then we get on interviews with them. Sometimes they're different people. Sometimes they're the same face that's showing in the interview. And we have identified this through other things that we're doing internally, process wise, to highlight this so that we don't fall into the trap. But we were looking for technology to help us identify these deep fakes, right? Help us identify these situations. And thank you very much for the introduction to Sandy and his team. We're having some of that conversation now about potentially leveraging some of their capabilities within Summit 7. But that's the reason it came up, is because we are seeing active attacks against us, or attempts to bring potentially not well-meaning individuals into our organization. And we put all of these security platforms, we put all of these security capabilities in place to protect ourselves and to protect our clients. Well, if you can't defeat those, or those are too difficult to defeat, you just go around them and become an insider, right? And so now we're talking about insider threat. And that is what is keeping me up at night right now, is insider threat. Because and so we're doing lots of things internally, process wise. How do we have our team accessing customer environments? How do we have our team accessing our environment? Segmenting access, getting the teams as small as we can, putting technologies in place to protect ourselves against ourselves. So all of those kinds of capabilities are being put in place, but we have attackers that are literally trying to become employees. And this isn't just a thing with Summit 7. This is happening all over the country, where these attackers are trying to essentially get hired to get access to environments, so that they can then sell that access, or if they're motivated to do things on behalf of a foreign government. And that's what we're trying to protect against. It's taking it really to the next level.
That's great. Great summation of that, Scott. Now, as I turn it over to Chris, if anybody, you might want to put the HR department at Summit 7 on aware alert if Chris Lair's resume shows up, because that is the shadiest, guys.
Probably need to hire one of those deep fake guys first before you hire me.
His face is already up in the lunchroom, so
that's right. Exactly right. Hey, no, good to be here, Scott. Hey, so you kind of touched upon it, but obviously this is an urgent threat to you and to Summit 7. What do you think about, kind of, if you're talking to this overall community, this MS community, do you see this as an urgent threat, or something about, hey, don't panic, but you need to be prepared type problem?
Well, I think it depends to some degree on your size and your sophistication, if you will. because if small MSPs, at least in my experience, smaller MSPs typically hire people out of known networks. So you have people that are vouching essentially for the person that you're hiring. You know them, you've known them for some reason, or one of your employees knows that person, right? And so that community can be, really, pretty tight, right? From an individual, being, vetted through relationships that have existed previously. And that's important. And that's really, really good. Um, the larger a team gets and the more you start hiring from outside known networks, and you don't have the personal relationships with the individual that you're hiring, that's when the danger goes up, right? So it just kind of depends on, what kind of MSP are you and what does your hiring process and profile look like? Summit 7, we're growing right now a lot, right? We're hiring 15 to 20 individuals a month. We can't do that out of known networks. We have to hire outside of known networks for, just access to talent, but also, there's laws about, hiring law and all kinds of different things that you're trying to make sure that you're giving, people fair shots at jobs and all those kinds of things. And so we have all of those requirements on us. And so we have to open up beyond those known personal networks to be able to get access to the talent that we need. And that's where I feel like the danger really comes in, is because everything is being done remote. Interviews are being done remote. People may never come to the physical office. You don't have a known person to vouch for the identity or the skill set or capability of a person. And so when you start opening yourself up to that, that's when the danger goes up. And that's what I'm trying to protect against.
I also see that I see a lot of people, their interview process is very scripted and almost too structured.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
it makes it easier for these guys when they're interviewing these guys to answer all those questions and do all those
It
things. I
does.
mean, that's not my style, but I know a lot of people, sometimes you're like erring too much on the side of structure.
Yeah.
And you got to kind of change things up if
You do. And one of the things, some of the things that we've done, you can tell when somebody is using AI to answer questions. There's pauses, in the answers while they're trying to read and consume whatever they're being given to be able to, regurgitate it. I mean, you can see some of those kinds of things. So we've really trained our interviewers on how to spot that kind of stuff, and call it out on the interview. I mean, some people may think it's rude, but honestly, we call it out in an interview. Hey, that was a great answer that you just got off of Gen AI. Why don't you try this take on it, right? So we'll call that out in an interview. Also doing things like recording the interviews, right? That helps in a lot of different ways. You can now compare, individual from this posting. Okay, that looks like that other person that I just interviewed for something completely different. We can go back and we look at the video and see if it was the same person or whatever. So, and a lot of these people do not like to be recorded. They don't want to be recorded. Right. They don't want to leave those tracks. And so when you let people know that they're being recorded, you take the screenshots, you're cross-referencing it, you're training your people, by doing some of those things, you're helping increase your probability of winning against those kinds of attackers. And then when you start adding in capabilities like Sandy brings to the table, live deep fake, notifications, or, basically being able to identify these things live, that even gives you a better chance to identify and protect yourself.
Quick question, Scott, and Sandy next. Things like Glassdoor, like, do they give these threat actors intel to help in the ruse potentially? Scott,
Sure. I mean, anything that's out there can be used. I can't even tell you how many. I don't know what happened in the last month, but in the last month, the number of marketing emails that I've been getting that are AI generated, and it's just scraping content off of our press releases, off of LinkedIn, personal and business. I don't know what happened in the last month, but I have seen about a tenfold change in these marketing emails. And people aren't just using it for marketing. They can use it for developing a dossier on a company or on an individual to try and fool somebody into getting access, right? It's just, the technologies can be used for good or for bad. And it's happening a lot.
We saw, Sandy, as I go to you, we totally separate attack, Scott, but we're seeing threat actors even leverage things like AES, Amazon email services, because of their ability, their legitimacy, with DMARC, DKIM, and things like that. And it's actually, we're seeing that solutions like that drive up the numbers as well. Sandy, over to you with Glassdoor, and any take on the increase as well, like these services.
Yeah, so the DMARC, DKIM, SPF, all of the email header information is important for the bad guys, and up until recently, it's a great filtering tool. But you're absolutely right, and so that's why you need to get on a video call with these folks in order to vet it out. And it's kind of like, if whatever tool you're using, it's almost like having an alarm company sign on your front lawn. They're just going to go after a softer target, right? So you should, without question, have a solution in place. 99% of companies don't, and the front door is literally email. It's still the primary vector of attack. For every 100 people, if you're using the best anti-phishing tools that exist out there, for every 100 employees that you have, about 6 get through those anti-phishing software tools on a daily basis. And so as the attacks get more and more contextually aware by accessing the data that you're referring to, they get more and more relevant. And when we're all balancing on average 125 emails a day, some people it's 250, right? And so you're just banging them out as fast as you can. People make a mistake and they click on it, and it's 6 times a day. So if you've got a 1,000-person organization, 10,000, you can imagine the numbers just get out of control.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up, Sandy, because one of the things that I see in the incident response side is those targets. People are focused on kind of the active titles or their active roles, and what I've seen is it's somebody that had a prior role, and people forget about that. So, for example, I know of a bank that a BEC type situation. Fortunately, there's no money lost or anything of that nature, but it was the former secretary of the board. That person hadn't filled that role for a few years, but that's all they needed. And so if you were looking at the current stuff, you would have forgot about that person who had those prior roles. So you have to be aware of those soft spots, and they don't go away. I mean, you might change a person, move them into a lesser role, but because they're in a more critical role and maybe you didn't do the things that you're supposed to do from an access and permissions perspective, they're gonna get through. Hey, so I got another. So Scott, you answered the other question we had earlier about kind of like if for organizations in the DIB, what's the benefit there for these guys getting through? But I'll jump to Sandy. Homeland Security says the danger is not the tech, but it's our tendency to believe what we see. What controls actually change human behavior inside the help desk, finance, and executive assistance workflows?
So, look, at the end of the day, every organization needs to have security controls put in place. We've seen some finance organizations use safe words, and they use sophisticated systems to manage the safe words, but it doesn't scale. It doesn't work well. You need to step it up a notch, and while we'll all use mobile phones, the ability to do shaken and stir has been around for decades, yet no mobile carriers are employing it. And so you need some sort of out of band methodology to confirm that approval from that executive. You need to have systems in place with which you can identify the voice and or the video and or any context of any communication, and the vast majority of companies are just not using those. It's the God's honest truth.
Yeah, it is. And they don't, and a lot of times they do it after the fact, right? They don't have it as part of their employee onboarding. They don't reinforce it. They, it's only when something goes wrong that they then spring into action, knee-jerk reaction, and do what they need to do. My last question for you, Sandy, is around lip sync and voice cloning. What does your red team do to catch like a CEO voice call during finance, or maybe during a financial situation at the end of quarter, or like when the team is all stressed and rushing, which these days sounds like every day, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, so I don't know if many of you are familiar, but we use all these tools in-house to determine if our tools are working. So like Deep Live Cam, Expression, Deep Swap, there's a whole bunch of them. Some are free, some you pay for, and you could literally just wave your hand over your face and or ask the person to do so, and the frame rate, depending upon the machine that you're using, would help. So it's the poor man's tool. So last year, the poor man's tool worked really well. And then they all started upgrading their machines. And if you're using the latest version of like Deep Live Cam version 2.2 on a $5,000 desktop that's got some crazy 5000 series NVIDIA GPU, it's got about 30 frames per second, and you can go like this and it works just fine. So last year, if you had a few $1,000 machine in some previous versions, you go like this and you would see artifacts, little hesitation, little that you didn't even need to use the AI detection tools to determine LAA, and LAA is the lip sync detection algorithms. You could just go like this, and immediately you would see the redrawing and possibly their original face. But now, if the bad guys are either state sponsored, very well funded, and or they're whaling, they're whale hunting for very specific large targets, then you will not be able to defeat that by just using those old waving techniques.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. Now I'm going to turn it over to somebody that will probably never be deep faked. But I think Andrew wants to ask a question first. So we just messed up my flow.
I could never deep fake. We can never deep fake Eric. No, Alan asked a great question, Eric. I was going to go to you here, and maybe from Scott, from a practical who's practicing MSP. But Eric, you work with hundreds of companies in their policies and protocols in HR, etc. Alan says, hey, any suggestions on interview training policy where we could provide HR departments of our clients how to validate candidates before final interviews? Any thoughts as you listen to all of this, and then love Scott's take as well?
Yeah, it's a great question. And then there was I think Eric chimed in, the other Eric, who said this is all going to push us back to in-person interviews.
Yeah,
it's amazing what the kind of the full circle that we've come with respect to interviewing, and work being an activity and not a place. But it's a good question about how to train HR people. But it's not just training HR people; it's also training your finance people and training your accounting people and training anybody who has access to money in your organization is huge.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Scott? Have you changed things based on this?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, we're actively changing things now. In fact, Huntress actually had a really good blog this weekend. Actually, or I think it went out this weekend. I saw it this weekend around this topic. You might want to go out and check that blog out. But yeah, it's something that we are actively changing right now. And one of the things that we're considering, that we're talking about internally right now, is literally not allowing an offer to go out the door until we have an in-person interview. That's something that we're considering, which is challenging. It's very expensive as well. mean, because we have employees in 30 states. So we have people all over the place. We hire wherever they are, wherever we can find the right talent. That's where we hire. And so moving to, in-person interviews, final interviews, is going to be expensive, but it's hard to fake lunch, right? It's hard to fake lunch. If you can take somebody out and take them to lunch and get to know them a little bit and have conversations and do those things, you defeat a lot of this attack vector. You defeat a lot of it, right? So
Yeah.
that's one of the things that we're looking at doing.
Yeah, Mike put in like exactly what I was thinking, proctored interviews. Like, Scott, how about like in region? Like, have you thought about like, we don't have anybody in this region, but we're going to have somebody meet you to validate
we haven't so much done that. Right now we're just thinking about, okay, do we do it for everybody? Do we only do it for certain positions? So we're having those conversations actively with HR right now, and our security team is involved in those conversations about what is the best way to approach specifically the hiring challenge. There's lots of other challenges with non-hiring that we still have to figure out how to deal with. Sandy, I'm sure, can talk about a dozen different scenarios where these types of issues are a big deal. The one that I'm primarily trying to solve for right now is the hiring problem. So.
Yeah. I think you should go right to, if you can wrestle Jacob Horn and win, you're hired. So that's the criteria for getting into Summit 7.
There you go.
Back to those in-person interviews.
Yeah. There you
Absolutely.
go. Eric, over to you.
So Scott, you talked a little bit about just some personal experiences that you've had recently with the topics that we're talking about today. But can you share with me why you think that MSPs in particular might be particularly susceptible or vulnerable to deep fake and disinformation tactics as opposed to other types of organizations out there?
Well, I think, MSPs, they may not be more vulnerable specifically, but I think that they're likely to be more targeted, specifically because of the access that they have to their customers, right? So is it harder to compromise 200 individual customers to get access to whatever you're looking for? Or is it harder to compromise an MSP and then get access to 200 customers through that compromise, right? We saw the vulnerability, we've seen it with multiple, just even software platforms, CrowdStrike, for example, right? If you can get hired at CrowdStrike, and it doesn't matter, right? It could be any company. If you can get hired at a company whose software is being used or whose systems are being used in hundreds or thousands of companies, and you can go into the code base and make a change and get that change through change control, and then that gets deployed out to hundreds or thousands of companies, and then you execute on it, you can compromise hundreds or thousands of companies at one time rather than trying to compromise each individual company, right? The CrowdStrike situation, while it was a mistake, it was as good as any hack has ever been done, right? At taking down critical infrastructure, taking down our transportation infrastructure. Look what happened to Delta. Goodness, right? That mistake could have very easily been planted by a state-sponsored attacker, right? And take down our entire transportation infrastructure in the meantime. So that's why I think that these concentrations of access or concentrations of software, they are targets, and they need to have a higher level of paranoia about ensuring that they don't get compromised because of it.
Scott, do you use this though for the whole edict of supply chain when you're talking to the defense industry? Like when you're in lobbying in Washington, like there's huge concentrations in the supply chain. Take MSP. Yes, MSPs are part of it, but the whole supply chain.
Yeah, it's supply chain risk management, right? At the end of the day, you're talking about supply chain risk management, and how do you protect your entire supply chain, regardless of if you are an MSP or if you're a defense contractor or you're doing anything. you've got to protect your supply chain, because that supply chain can then be used to turn around and attack you, right? And so, one of my more recent fever dream, attack vectors, because I don't know why I think these things up, but what if a company, and you're looking at your customers, right? What if we had a customer that came to Summit 7 and they were state sponsored, right? Attack group, but they came to us as a customer to come on board Summit 7 as a customer, and then potentially use the tool sets that we put in place to then hack up the chain to then go out and get our customers, right? These are the kinds of crazy, scenarios that MSPs specifically, and other supply chain, organizations with large supply chains have to take into consideration. Because anytime you get in a trusted position, you can use that trusted position to compromise one layer, right? And then if you can string those together far enough, you can compromise an entire ecosystem.
Got it.
So Scott, we've heard a lot about the term disinformation over the past 7 or 8 years, but largely in the realm of politics, right? It's a relatively new term in the IT space. So can you tell us when a tech leader should treat disinformation as a pure security threat?
Yeah, so this is an interesting one. And I think you start getting into traditional, we'll call it, warfare strategy. There's some there's some conversations to be had about how, what's going on in cyber and what's going on in IT, looks very much like traditional warfare, where you have feigning attacks, or you have, for example, we saw with Iran, right? The mission that the Air Force ran, the B-2s that took off from Missouri, and did a long run to Iran to drop the bombs in Iran. Well, the DoD was doing disinformation leading up to that specific attack. What did they do? Well, allegedly they moved about 12 B-2s to Diego Garcia in the middle of the Indian Ocean, and everybody thought that that's where the attack was going to come from. So they had Iran looking at Diego Garcia as the attack vector. Well, in the meantime, while Iran was looking that way, we come from Missouri, completely different route, and attack that route. So disinformation from a cyber standpoint could be the same thing. You make a very noticeable attack, using one mechanism, and then use that disinformation to get somebody, all ramped up about one potential attack while you're coming around the back door doing something completely different. So that kind of disinformation, can be used in cyber just as like it could be used in traditional kinetic warfare.
Fantastic. So Sandy, when we think about deep fake countermeasures, there's a lot to unpack. So tell us what you consider to be non-negotiable today versus which ones are still aspirational.
Good question. People talk about like watermarking and provenance type of technologies. And while that might be helpful, in this day and age, it's kind of DOA. And the reason why I say it's dead on arrival is you need every single source of information that you would possibly be interacting with to be using those tools. And so you need to, like, what is your ground truth, right? So when you're looking at, taking a picture, right, you always go back to the negatives, because the negatives are your ground truth. Our patents all focus on every source of information we could possibly get our hands on. So we're interested in all the metadata, and all the metadata that we are compiling into a number of features, as well as all of the video and voice inference. And so it's the combination of all of that together to help give you that ground truth. And so it needs to be a detection model. It can't use watermarking, cryptographic provenance, or anything else in that measure, because you will how many times in any given week are we jumping on a Teams, a Meet, a Zoom call with someone we've never met before? So it has to be ground truth. It has to be a detection model that's ingesting all of these signals. That's the only answer.
So when you think about detection and detection of anything, right? It's always a cat and mouse game. So you've got the bad guys come up with something, then the good guys try to detect it and combat it. So detection is always playing catch up. So how do the bad guys evade those deep fake detectors, and how do you counter those countermeasures?
Yeah, no. So if you're looking at the bad guys and what they do, right? So there's a number of different algorithms that are used to create the deepfake. And the deepfake itself uses something called face swap, or another one is using a GAN. And I won't go into the nuances of each of these models, but as the deepfake generation technology gets more and more advanced, but the bigger concern isn't so much about the technology getting better as it is about the ease of use that everyone can access it now. You can make a real-time voice clone of someone with 6 seconds of audio on $1,000 laptop. Like, it's just incredible the ease with which you can do that nowadays. So that's the big concern. Or a $2,500 desktop with deep live cam previous versions, gets 16 frames a second. That's pretty convincing to most people who haven't been given the fear of God with regards to some of these capabilities. And so, look, not only do we have to concern ourselves with the latest, greatest deepfake detection tools and using these algorithms and all of the algorithms. We don't believe in just LAA or just GAN. We're using diffusion, face swap, and then we have to make sure that those models are compiled by trusted model providers that are domestic, that are US based. You cannot rely on foreigners in the creation of these models. It's becoming more and more important to verify the source.
So Bob, you've been really, really patient. I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, thanks. Good. It's good to meet everybody for the first time. So Scott, I got a question. So in the defense sector, if you had a client that all of a sudden had to face viral deep fake related to being accused of classified data being leaked by them, what would your immediate action plan kind of look like to try and assist that client?
Yeah, sure. So, honestly, it needs to be part of your incident response planning, right? You need to go
Yeah,
ahead and
right.
have, people should be modifying their incident response plans today, specifically to take into consideration these type of deepfake situations. And so, I think the first part of it is preparation beforehand. Is before you ever have an incident, you need to have the right tool sets in place. You need to have the right processes and procedures in place to know how to deal with it. You need to have, PR firms, on retainer, what have you. And then I would say the first thing that you got to do is you got to validate if, is the breach real or not, right? Is it truly a deep fake? Is this a disinformation campaign that's being waged against you? Or was there a problem that you just don't know about yet? And you've got to first have the tool sets and the capabilities to go figure that out. And then once you determine that, okay, if this is an actual incident that needs to be, run to ground, okay, we're going to go do that. And you need to have the processes in your incident response plan to deal with that. If it is a situation that's disinformation, then you need to have a process in place for legal takedown notices to go, have those videos removed wherever you can have them removed. You need to have, kind of your a PR team on on retainer, so that you can develop a response to this, disinformation campaign. And then you run through those steps that you develop in your incident response plan. So I think it's just the more of the same. Incident response planning is something that you have to plan for beforehand, and then once you get a good plan in place, you just execute that through the program. But I think the key point is understanding, is this an actual incident or is this a disinformation campaign? And if it's a disinformation campaign, that's the branch that most companies have to go develop still. Most companies have not developed an incident response plan directly for disinformation yet.
Okay, so I got a follow-up question. Oh, go ahead. I'm
Yeah, I was
sorry.
gonna say, Bob, but that should be music to your ears. I mean, what I mean
I
by
was just about to ask a question. Yeah, go ahead. You ask yours first.
That's what he did. Bob just got free consulting advice for his company, man.
well, just the fact that Scott highlighted that IR plans are dynamic, right?
Yeah.
And I think so many organizations, it's like Eric talks about with MSAs. It's like it's works like you put them away for 5 years and never look at them. I mean, IR plans aren't like that.
That's correct.
Especially today, right, Scott? I mean, yeah, go Scott.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I mean, a great way to figure that out is in your next tabletop. Hopefully you're having them, right?
Here we go. Yeah.
In your next tabletop, do this scenario. Do a disinformation scenario in your next tabletop and see what happens, right?
Yep.
That's going to show you, at least it's going to identify where you need to shore up your IR plan.
Right. Yeah, because that was a loaded question I was about to ask. I was going to say, well, go ahead, man.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think Scott's entitled to some, portion of proceeds now, Bob, out of this.
Just from casually mentioned, because Scott may not even know that that's what we do, right? Is that we actually run simulations.
Oh, okay. I actually didn't know that, Bob.
Yeah. That's why I felt like it was everybody else. It's kind of an inside joke for everybody else. But I said I'm going to ask a loaded question, and everybody's going to heckle me for asking it. But that was exactly the question: was, look, how can the regular tabletop exercises and simulations, especially in this type of scenario, improve response speed and coordination, right? Because that's the real key about these things, especially with the speed of the way these can actually evolve, right? Because when it's just disinformation, that doesn't require them to get inside of your network other than to scrape the data they need to actually pull this off. They can get this stuff passively, and when they make an attack, you got to go full guns to try and counter that, right?
You have to respond quickly, otherwise it catches on like wildfire, and now everybody thinks that your company has been breached or whatever the problem is. They think has happened. And that's why you got to have, go ahead and build out, your documentation for, what does a takedown notice look like? Have that available in your toolkit. Call Eric up and say, Eric, I need you to help me build a takedown notice document that I can use.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, well, Scott and Sandy, I'll be in touch with you, so because we can build that scenario pretty quick and put it out there we do a free game every month, so we could put a free one out there for people to see. So, all right, next question. So do you think a sectored focus by the like groups of MSPs and the defense industrial base, can we work as a consortium to collaborate? Maybe we need to start looking at building the framework for this particular set of vectors, right? Because this is not really represented necessarily. It's a different, because of the speed and everything, it's a different type of framework we're going to have to look at building, right? So what do you think about the idea of doing it that way?
So I'm really big on standards. Obviously working in compliance, we do a lot in compliance, obviously with CMMC. So I'm really big on standards and frameworks. And so I think we do need something like that, right? But the first place that I always look when I start looking for standards is I look to NIST, right? National Institute of Standards and Technologies. And, what they do over at NIST is specifically build these things out. And I know that they are in the process of building out and releasing documentation around AI standards, AI frameworks, deep fakes. Sandy, you may know even better than I do, what NIST is doing around these things, because you guys are probably paying attention to it really closely because that's your product. But NIST is who I always look to for standards. And then if there's not something that NIST has put together, then I think it's good for a consortium or another industry group to then step in and fill that hole. But NIST is where I always look to first.
Yeah, Understood. It's okay. So
And for those of you that missed last week's episode, NIST was on last week's episode.
yeah, that's right. Well,
But
let's
did
go
you guys
back and look.
have Vicky Pelletieri on?
No, but we talked about Vicky.
Okay.
But, yeah, it was
Yeah.
more. It was around the CSF.
Oh, okay.
But,
Yeah, Vicky's fantastic. So
she
yeah,
is.
Ron Ross just retired out of there. Again, titan of the cybersecurity world, if you will. He's done just such a fantastic career. But I actually see more on LinkedIn now from him after he retired than he ever put out while he was actually at NIST. So
That could be deep fake, Ron.
hopefully not.
All right. So Sandy, I got a question for you. So, I mean, given the fact that, what you guys spend your time doing is trying or working to detect these coming in from all their sources, how do you, because of the level of complexity, how do you manage the tension between flagging too many too many items as fakes when they're really true, or missing those that are actually truly malicious? That's pretty. It's high stakes from that perspective. How do you guys balance that?
So trying, that's harsh. I don't know. We're not
Well,
trying. We're doing. No, honestly, you make a very good question. It's a very good point. And the truth is depending on the source media, and it's tough because each of us who do deep fake detection have tweaked to our customer base, right? So
right.
if you are looking at an asynchronous image offline, it's a different use case than real-time video, and we're doing all of it, right?
Mhm.
And so we adjust our models and adjust the response to those depending on that communication. And so so the word is ensembles. The answer is ensembles. Like, what is an ensemble? So we're all using AI to defeat AI. And so we're using an AI model we have a voice model, we have a video model, we have email models, we have third-party models. And so an ensemble is when you take those different AI models and you train them together. So there's different kinds of AI models. There's bagging, voting, stacking, meta models, and boosting. And so there are all these different models. And I won't go into the nuance of it because it's part of our secret sauce. But the way in which you address and minimize false positives and or false negatives is by using these models that are constantly adaptive, that are actually being retrained off of feedback to continually address that specific mode of communication. And we honestly believe in ingesting everyone's models. We see competitors at conferences, and people think, oh, you're a competitor to them, and we're like, no, they make good models. And so we are of the opinion to take in and ingest everyone's models, because it's these ensembles are the answer. It's the only way to defeat AI is with everyone's AI. You need every tool in your arsenal, and that's the answer, quite honestly.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. But that opens the door. We already talked about that though, right? It opens the door to a third party being compromised, right? A model being compromised by somebody. So it doesn't change. To Scott's point, it's more of the same. We've just kind of moved to a little bit different neighborhood in this situation, right? So
Yeah, and so we'll vet those folks, but all of those guys that we've signed deals with, that we're ingesting their models plus our own models.
mhm.
It's something that there's a little bit of overlap. These three are using LAA, GAN, and face and or diffusion and or RPPG. There's all these different algorithms, but we believe that the more data that you ingest into an ensemble, the better off you are in order to fight the bad guys.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. So when you're looking out, so this is all right. So I hate even asking this question because I knew it was bad. I knew it was going to be trouble, because in the end, I have trouble thinking about it myself. But thinking out 3 to 5 years, if you're looking out into the future, what's some of your biggest worries, or what are the things that worry you the most, especially with the development of these deep fake technologies and the infrastructure and how it relates to the defense chain?
Honestly, I don't think people have even looked in the rearview mirror yet. Like the vast
Yeah, that's the
majority of
problem.
Americans don't know what happened to Ascension Healthcare last year.
Right.
I mean, it was 140 hospitals, millions of people taken offline from being able to get, emergency treatment in or my neighbor, he's a cardiac interventionalist who puts in stents in people, and they could do only half the volume that they would otherwise do because they were reduced back to paper that was stuffed in drawers. For it cost them $1.5 billion, and it
Wow.
all started with one email to some dude in Michigan who allowed the compromising of a bunch of different servers.
I think we
Yeah.
know who that Michigan guy was, Chris, don't we?
There's only one guy we know in Michigan, to be honest with you.
Well,
So my point though is that honestly, we've already seen what's happened with CrowdStrike, with MGM, with Ascension, and so the Marco Rubio or the Sombrero, right? Like the disinformation and what is happening already from a nightmare PR or perspective for some organization that where brand matters more than anything else,
Yeah.
or from the defense industrial base, God forbid, right? Like these are very scary times, and people need to go,
that's
improve and fix that security hole that they've got.
Let's let Scott go.
yeah. So yeah, I mean, I know we're about at time here, but that's the thing that really concerns me is that we're talking about pretty advanced threats on this conversation today, but we still have the vast majority of the industrial base, and even beyond that, the rest of our critical infrastructure, or even just normal business, who haven't implemented basic MFA, right? I mean, so we're talking about graduate level
Yeah, it's
IT
true.
security topics, and we're trying to get the majority of the commercial ecosystem through first grade, right? And that's what scares me is that there's so much work to do just to get the majority of businesses to a minimum baseline. I mean, the cybersecurity poverty line, I know you guys have heard that terminology before. It
Right.
is so real. It is so real. And there are so many companies that, we're talking about AI and deep fakes and all these crazy topics that are real attack vectors. They are real and they need to be addressed, but we can't even get the basics put in place at the majority of businesses.
But
And that's
Scott, but
what
I
scares
believe
me.
that that's due to the friction. It's too hard for many of these companies, and I think MFA is dead. We need to make it even simpler, and there's ways to do that.
Well,
And
okay,
so,
yeah, I mean, yeah, we obviously need to do that, and I understand what you're saying, and I get that, but I'm just talking about basic security.
Yep.
Even understanding basic security functions, most businesses aren't there yet, and
agreed.
that's what scares me.
Yeah. Scott, in closing, 30 seconds, 60 seconds left, whatever it is. What are your bullishness on getting the rest of critical infrastructure to adopt a common framework? I think that's part of your mission.
Yeah, it is.
So what are your thoughts? Where is that going to go, do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, DoD was the first mover, right? They are obviously, when it comes to critical infrastructure, DoD and the DoD supply chain are, kind of on the upper end of readiness, if you will. Even then, I would still say that we have a long way to go. But there's a lot of other critical infrastructure out there that is, that is really in trouble, and it's going to take a long time for us to get all of that critical infrastructure up to speed. Even from an agency standpoint, there are agencies that are trying to jump on the train with, DoD, DOW. Think about, Homeland Security and some of the other agencies like that. But then, at Billington, Mark Montgomery, who was one of the authors on the Solarium Commission, back in the teens. He from the stage called out, certain agencies and basically said, you guys aren't doing anything, right? He specifically called out education and agriculture and said, you guys aren't doing anything yet. And you are critical infrastructure, right? I mean, you're talking about our food supply chain. You're talking about, our education and everything that goes along with that. And there's a long way to go. I think it's going to take, it took us a decade to get where we are now with DoD. It's going to take us another decade or more to get there with the rest of the agencies.
Well said.
Can I ask one last question to you, Scott?
Sure.
What about OT? I mean, that area scares me a ton because the technology is so antiquated. We're talking utilities, water, and it's ancient, archaic.
It is, and DoD is not even addressing OT yet, right? We're still talking pure IT, cybersecurity. DoD, for the defense industrial base has not laid out these are the requirements from an OT standpoint for all the manufacturing systems that are out there, right? And so we have as far as we have to go on IT side of things, we have 2 or 3x that far to go on the OT side.
Man, this was great. Eric, any closing comments on what's happening in the legal area? Are people asking you about AI policy and address? Are any of your clients? I mean, 400 or 500 of them. What percent are coming to you?
Less than 2%.
Wow.
Yeah, but I will tell you, I had dinner a couple of weeks ago with an attorney. She just specializes in AI. And it's interesting especially for companies like Sandy's that are creating and have AI and that type of thing. But it's going to get down to the small and medium-sized businesses sooner than later. But there's a real market for it in the legal space right now. It's pretty intense.
But to Scott's point, I think there's a heck of a lot more organizations getting popped because they don't use MFA than because of deep fakes or AI.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
Well, first off, Scott, thanks a million for coming on. This was, I think, one of our best. Surprise having you on. Sandy, the same. Really educational, really timely, really topical. And to our co-host, Bob Miller, Chris Lair, Eric Tiltz, thanks so much for joining. And to all of you out there, all the best as we kick off Q4. Hard to believe. Make it a safe and awesome week ahead. We'll look forward to seeing you next Monday. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Wow.
Wow.